Well, hello and welcome to today's deadline stream. Of course, it is game week 7. We're going to talk through some injury news from the press conferences. As we've seen there, it is well done to All About FPL for a great little thread on the latest news. So shout out to All About FPL. But yeah, we're going to get into our game week 7 team selection, looking back quickly at how we got on in game week 6, and make sure you join the mini league that I talk about at the end of the video, because of course I had a new podcast this week which we will get to. But yeah, do smash a like on the video of this deadline stream. Don't forget the deadline is 11 o'clock, so that's about an hour and a half away. So lock in those teams ahead of game week number 7. It's a double game week for Burnley and Luton. I'm not sure you want to be going out of your way to getting those assets. But Luton, of course, have a double game week. They have Everton away and then Burnley at home. And Burnley have got Newcastle away and then, of course, Luton away. So I think ultimately you're not going to be looking at too many Burnley defenders unless you already own Jordan Bayer. You're not going to be owning too many Luton defenders because of their lack of clean sheets. And especially when you look at the fact that, all right, Everton, they'll be at home. You fancy them to probably get one at least with the form they're on, and then they face a Burnley side that are quite attacking. So it's going to be interesting whether or not Burnley can score against Luton. But without Lyle Foster in the first game, maybe there's a chance of a Newcastle clean sheet, which is actually quite good for a lot of managers invested in those Newcastle defenders. But let's talk about the recent press conference updates. So with regards to Arsenal, Rice, Martinelli, Trossard, Saka have not trained with the team. At least that was the situation regarding Friday evening, prior to that session on the Friday. But there was a picture that was released, whether or not it was legitimate or not. But it was released of a Saka signing some shirts and some autographs, apparently outside in Bournemouth. So Saka may not be starting. We have to wait and see. There's no guarantee, but I wouldn't necessarily now -4 him out or transfer him out, because there's a chance he's in the squad. Whether or not he starts for sure, we'll have to see. But I wouldn't necessarily sell Saka this week with this new information. So it's good that some people have left it till now to transfer him out if they needed to. My advice would be just keep him in your team. As much as he looks like he's a flag player, I think hopefully he will get the start. There's no guarantee, but I think it's not worth moving him out, especially when you know he's a proven asset on penalties, and away to Bournemouth is a great fixture for Bukayo Saka. So the only argument to move him out would have been if he was ruled out for this week. And obviously they have Champions League and Arsenal have Man City as well coming up. So you thought maybe Saka would be rested for this ahead of those big games with a slight knock. But sounds like he might be in the squad. So it'll be frustrating, of course, if we all start him and he does end up getting benched and comes on for the 1-pointer. But it's very rare that Saka tends to do that. Whether or not Saka will be risked from the get-go and starting, we'll have to see. But I think he's just too much of a good asset to be selling hastily. Obviously, Son is an interesting one this week. In a game week 8 week where you'd kind of like a captaincy option outside of Haaland away to Arsenal, Son does look a good long-term move. This week, though, I'm not sure I would necessarily go for it. I did talk about in the podcast that I was going to do Saka to Son, but that was before, of course, we heard the injury news for Ben Chilwell. So Chilwell is an interesting one. A lot of people selling him this week, but it's kind of good in a way that he's got injured. As much as I feel for Chilwell, it's given us FPL managers, from an FPL perspective, a decision to make when we probably should have made that decision a few weeks ago. So it's an excuse to sell Chilwell, who's just not been performing, has been starting on the bench most weeks, and Chelsea defensively have just not been keeping clean sheets. So he's not been justifying the price of 5.6 million. And so, yeah, there was news of possibly Saka going down in price, Son going up in price last night. It didn't happen. So it's a good thing for those that didn't move out Saka. And as I say, I would keep at the moment. Also, regarding the Saliba knock, he wasn't involved in the last game. Fabio wasn't involved, Fabio Vieira, but it's a late call for Saliba. Again, the same thing goes for Saliba as Saka. I would just start if I own Saliba. It's going to be a tight one, a late call, but there's a good chance he will be at least in the squad, you would hope. Spurs, now obviously Son and Maddison also slight injury doubts. Maddison came off of that Arsenal game with a collision with his knee after a challenge with Jorginho, and Maddison to be fair to the journalist, fair play to him. Because he asked the question for Ange Postecoglou, is Maddison going to play? Of course, Postecoglou, as a former Fantasy Premier League player, but now a manager who's had to give all that up, he gave nothing away. So we have to just be patient. And again, I'd say it the same with Saliba and Saka. Just if you own Maddison, I wouldn't sell. Long term, he's a player you want to have in your side. And there's a good chance I think he still does start this week. So yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about that. Son, obviously, that was a bit of a weird one on Friday afternoon. We saw that pop up on FPL out of nowhere, really. But there was rumours that he was playing through that Arsenal game with a bit of a knock, Heung-min Son. And so maybe that's what FPL has just updated it with, showing that as a knock. But I don't think it's anything too serious. And both Maddison and Son did train on Friday, unlike the likes of Saka and Martinelli pre-Friday. So there's a slight more optimism with the Spurs boys than there is with Saka at the moment. So I think they'll both be fine. But I wouldn't be necessarily transferring in Son if there's any doubt at the moment about whether he will play. He probably will, but when you've got someone like Saka who's good enough, and if you've already made a transfer, for instance, I wouldn't say switching Saka out for this week alone is worth a -4. Looking at the rest of it, Brennan Johnson's ruled out, so that's good, I suppose, for the likes of Son owners who might be thinking, oh, I hope he starts in the number 9 spot. Well, Brennan Johnson obviously been playing with Son the last couple of games. Obviously, the Sheffield United one, he started, and then Richarlison came on. And then also we had the Arsenal game, Brennan Johnson started that one. So, or at least Johnson might have come off the bench against Sheffield United and obviously got the goal, but it was disallowed. So I think Son is very likely, when he's fit, to, at this current point in time, be starting as the number 9, because although Richarlison did score against Sheffield United not too long ago, I think this is the sort of game that suits Son in behind Liverpool's high line. I think he could really do well. So that's why I'm kind of like a bit gutted I didn't make him in the transfer. If I had someone else to sell that I wanted to, like Fernandes, okay, not great form, but a great fixture against Palace. Mbumo, the same thing. So these are all assets I would have liked to have dropped for Son, but as I say, it's not worth the -4. Man City, KDB and Silva obviously still out, but Doku is an interesting one because Grealish looks like he's back now. So I wonder, will Grealish take minutes off Doku in the foreseeable? Possibly. Foden as well can play on the left, so it's a big headache for those Pep players yet again. Pep roulette. And Julian Alvarez was unlucky last week, got subbed off because of the red card to Manchester City's Rodri. So of course they'll be without him. Will that make things easier in any way, shape or form? Probably not for Wolves, because they'll still struggle in that midfield battle, I believe. But ultimately, for the City assets, if you've got someone like Foden who is possible to play, especially with players like Rodri out, they have to fill some numbers. I just think with Grealish coming back, that is a thing to think about. So I wouldn't get too overconfident on your wingers. But the likes of Julian Alvarez, I think, is still pretty nailed, along with obviously the robot Erling Haaland, who of course scored against Wolves in this fixture last season, and then also at the Etihad scored a hat-trick. So, let's not doubt the robot here. We've got Newcastle up next. Now, Newcastle, Harvey Barnes is out, which is, of course, good news for those that are looking at Anthony Gordon. The problem with Anthony Gordon, of course, is that he's on 4 yellow cards, so he might be a good short-term punt. But if you think that he does deliver this week and you don't really mind about him missing a game in the future game weeks, then fine, go for it. But I'm not the most keen on that pick, to be honest, when I think there's so much competition in midfield. I don't mind Pedro Neto at a similar price, to be fair, but he has got Man City this week, so I would avoid for now. But generally, Gordon's not a bad pick. It's just whether or not there'll be some rotation, whether or not Gordon might get a rest here or there. We'll have to see with the Champions League, obviously. But obviously, Barnes being out injured does increase the expected minutes of Gordon. Isak and Wilson both got injuries, as has Botman. They're all going to be late calls, basically. So, again, I would say, it as with Saliba and Saka and Maddison and Son, start if you've got Isak or Wilson or Botman. Probably actually more if you've got Wilson. I would start Wilson anyway. And the same goes for Botman. I would just go for it because we're not going to get any additional information probably for those Newcastle players, unfortunately, because, we just don't know. It's a late call. So I think ultimately I would just start them and hope for the best. Wilson obviously been starting games now over Isak in the Premier League. Isak's got the Champions League games, so I would be a bit worried if I owned Isak long term. But yeah, maybe just bench him this week. Ultimately, Newcastle obviously got a fixture against a Burnley side that they can score goals in, but you just never know who's going to start, whether Isak's going to get the minutes. But certainly with the Newcastle defenders like Botman, Burn has been confirmed fit as well, so I would definitely start him. Brighton. Now, Brighton, obviously, they've had a few injuries the last few weeks. Ferguson, though, is back, so that's good news for him. But it's just a bit of a rotation risk with the Europa League and with all Brighton's attacking options. Obviously, they've still got João Pedro available. They've still got the likes of... obviously, they've just brought in this guy from Adingra, so they've got plenty of options, right? So I wouldn't be certified that just because, the likes of Welbeck's not playing every match, for instance. I mean, he scored against Manchester United, but I don't know. I just wouldn't rest on your laurels, basically, that Ferguson will be straight back in to start because, as we know, there's a lot of competition. Chelsea, Chilwell is out. He's out for about 4 weeks, so it's not looking good if you own Ben Chilwell, hence you should sell this week. Reece James, though, maybe could be back for Game Week 7, after Game Week 7, in Game Week 8, so watch out for that. Manchester United, now, obviously Martinez and Reguilon out does mean a bit of a headache for those that own Onana because that's maybe the weaker their chance of a clean sheet, but I still feel that you'd hold Onana with the fixtures for Man United long term. Anthony's also back in training but cannot be available for the Palace game. And then of course we have Liverpool. Trent is back from an injury, so he's trained and will be looking good for the game against Tottenham. Aston Villa, Bailey is also injured, so he will not be playing this one. What a troll he is. But Moreno nearly back, so watch out for Lucas Digne owners. Moreno could be back soon. Maybe quite not yet, though. Brentford, Sharda is out, as is Ben Mee, Henry, and also Damsgaard has been ruled out. So, yeah, not looking good for the Brentford defence with Mee and Henry both out. Solanke didn't train. It's a bit of a late call, but it doesn't look good for Solanke. So he may start, but there's a bit of doubt in the air at the moment. So that could be good for your Arsenal defenders if you've got any. But ultimately, talking of Arsenal, Saliba, I would still start regardless of his flag. Certainly, I think, he did score in this game last season, Saliba, so you never know. Also, we have Crystal Palace. He's been ruled out for Game Week 7, Edouard. He scored against Aston Villa recently, but then went off injured against Fulham. Yeah, so he's not going to be fit to play this one. Henderson as well for Palace, the goalkeeper. He's been ruled out, which is good news if you're a Johnston owner, because he's definitely going to be fit for this week. But it doesn't look like a good news for the injury, so it might be long term. We'll have to wait and see. But obviously, scheme of things long term, we'll have to see if Henderson can truly be a competition to Johnston. But for now, Johnston owners, I would definitely keep. Obviously, if you've got a rotating keeper, then great, play them over Johnston this week, because Manchester United away is not the best of fixtures for a clean sheet chance. I know United have not been great, but it's not ideal. But if you have no one else, just start Johnston. Also, West Ham, Cresswell is not quite ready, so he's on the way to recovery, but not quite yet. Fulham, if you've got any Fulham players, maybe like your likes of Leno, Lukic will be involved, so that's another defensive midfielder to help out in the team. Burnley, obviously for the double game week, Manuel Benson is ruled out for the game against Newcastle, but maybe he might be back in time for the game on Tuesday against Luton. Redmond is hopefully back after the international break, but he's out at the moment. And as I said, with Foster, he misses the first game of the double game week. Luton Town. Now, Luton, of course, Barkley, he doesn't look to be fit for the game against his former side, Everton, but he might return for the match against Burnley. Lockyer is also back fit. And then Wolves, they've got a few suspensions. Obviously, Bellegarde being one of them after his red card last week against Luton. But also, Doyle cannot face his parent club. Everton as well, a few Everton players interesting, the likes of Pickford not doing too well in FPL, but Calvert-Lewin back in form. Mikolenko is a late call, and then Sheffield United, Gustavo Harmer is a bit better than he was, but it's a bit of a late call again to see whether he starts, because he's got a couple of goals recently. And then Fleck is back for Sheffield United. So that's all the team news. Again, thank you very much to All About FPL for that really helpful tweet. So just shout out to them. But yeah, let's talk about my Game Week 7 plans and my Game Week 6 results. Very quickly, I will show you a little transfer planner I've got here. So this is courtesy of a great website. Go and check if you haven't already. Live FPL. Obviously great as well for mid-game week, bonus points and things. But Plan FPL is brilliant for long-term planning and seeing how your team looks in future game weeks. So, of course, this week I'm going to be starting Onana, but I've made the transfer of Chilwell out, Trippier in. So that is my transfer for this week. I'm going for Kieran just because I believe that Burnley have got very little chance of a goal. Up at Newcastle, it's a tricky place to go, St James's Park, and Newcastle have shown the last couple of weeks really solid defence, one of the few defences to keep those clean sheets. So yeah, I'm liking the look of Trippier. Obviously, he's got the curse of the most transferred in, which is not nice. It's not nice to see. Obviously, game week 2 it was Chilwell, game week 3 and Mbumo, game week 4 it was Raheem Sterling against a certain Nottingham Forest side, and then of course in game week 5 it was I'm trying to think who it was now. Oh yeah, of course, it was Julian. No, was it Julian Alvarez? It was Heung-min Son, I think, against Sheffield United. And then, of course, it was Julian Alvarez last week. So look, it's been really unlucky with the curse. Will it continue? I don't think so. I think Burnley will probably struggle to score. Hopefully a clean sheet, lots of bonus points for those passes. And, he does rack up the bonus for a lot of things, Trippier. Set pieces, crosses, everything. But hopefully, yeah, he can get those attacking returns against his former side. So he's come in. Chilwell had to come out because even with the injury, regardless, Chelsea have just not been good enough in the last few weeks. And so away to Fulham, yeah, that would have been a good fixture. But Chilwell is out for 4 weeks now, so he had to be a sell. You can see there, Saka and Maddison still flagged. We'll get on to them. But let me just quickly show you my long-term strategies for this current team. Now, of course, none of these transfers are locked in. Things can change very quickly in FPL, so just see this as a rough guide. But what I've got here is a little outline of my team in the coming weeks. So what my kind of thoughts are around lineup. So this is what I've looking like for the next week. So this is a week before, a week after as well, this game week. So this is kind of my transfer thoughts at the moment. Matty Cash in that game week against Wolves, but it's very, very loose, of course, because I'll have 3 players from that Arsenal game. Not ideal, but as I said with Saka, he's just fixture proof. He's a long-term hold until obviously the wild card where you can maybe think about selling him. But I'm not sure when our wild card. It's probably going to be either 8, 9 or 10. I'll have to confirm that in a future video, but that's how I'm looking for the next couple of weeks. And I think ultimately it's looking pretty good. I've got a bit of money in the bank as well to play around with for future weeks. So yeah, that will be my transfer in game week 7. Trippier in for Chilwell. As I said, Son is an interesting one. I was tempted by that for the -4, but as I say, it's just not worth it. I think with Saka, there's a chance he will be in the team, and Son, there's a chance he might not, but I don't think I think he definitely will play Son. But even so, switching from one to the next when they're both good assets. Obviously, sometimes in FPL this season you have to take out good assets for other good assets. But this week, when there's a chance he plays and it's Bournemouth away, I mean, that's a better fixture than Liverpool at home. As much as Liverpool have defensively not been great this season, I think it's worth keeping Saka just for one more week because we know how explosive he can be. He got 13 points last week. Onana obviously didn't do the goods for me in the past few weeks in the first part of the season, but Burnley away he delivered the goods and got me that clean sheet. We also had on our bench Mark Guéhi, which was depressing because I was debating whether to start Chilwell or Guéhi ahead of that Villa fixture. We thought maybe he gets benched Chilwell, but if he starts with the likes of Malagusto out suspended, then that could be a high attacking upside game. We know how good Chilwell can be at that. But yet again, like with the Bournemouth game, he was benched. And bench Ilwell is not exactly making me happy at the moment. So he had to go. But yeah, to see that, I thought that was a great decision with the attacking upside of Chilwell. But then, of course, the clean sheet potential for Guéhi against Fulham was quite high. So I had to weigh that up. Didn't quite go to plan. 8 points swing in the end. But look, at the end of the day, I stand by the decision. Mitoma, obviously that was weird to see him benched, but it was still nice to get the returns, 14 points. And then Schär, that was incredibly unlucky because 8 goals for Newcastle and none of them somehow were a goal contribution, a return from Fabian Schär. Every other Newcastle defender, even Dan Burn, got in on the action. Trippier with 3 assists, Botman with a goal. It was like rubbing salt in the wounds. And so, yeah, it was a disappointing thing to see that. But of course, he did get the clean sheet. That's what he's there for. And so we'll take that any week, to be honest. But Mbumo was very frustrating for Brentford, home to Everton, 1-pointer. Obviously, we also had Fernandes that came in clutch with a 10-pointer, so just shows patience can pay off, and a nice game week 6 of 79 points. Talking of those 79 points, let me show you what it looked like. On the website, we had, of course, a game week rank of 2.19 million. Also, we did transfer in Fabian Schär, so he came in for, I do believe it was, I can't even remember who it was now. Let me have a little look, people. So this is where you can see my transfers. By the way, I made my Chilwell Trippier transfer very early on Thursday night, thinking, yeah, that could be a risky one if we get confirmation that Chilwell is starting. And then, of course, the day later, Chilwell was ruled out. So I'm very happy with that hindsight. Schär, obviously, yeah, that was it. Henry came out, and he was ruled out for the season after game week 5. So, yeah, it was a good transfer. Obviously, gained me 6 points, but at the end of the day, it was disappointing to not see more when everyone else seemed to cash in on the points in that Sheffield United result. So yeah, it was a good game week for me, all in all. Green Arrow, obviously nice to see those points for my midfielders. Only Mbumo letting me down, and Haaland returning on the captaincy. We cannot complain too much. So in terms of my game week history, this is how we've looked so far this season. It's been pretty decent, to be fair. Pretty happy with my progress at the moment. Obviously, a lot of people have struggled in FPL this season. Some tough ranks at the moment. But I'm currently at 1.3 million, which I think is not the worst place to be after a nice rank rise from 1.7 million to 1.3 million. So yeah, we're hoping to go big again in game week 7, double game week 7. I don't think I'll be bringing in any double game week assets though, because as I say, I'm not too confident in the ability of the teams that are doubling. And yeah, double game weeks have always burnt us in the past, and we've just done it because it's the double. But sometimes you've got to think one player with a good fixture who's playing for a good team is ultimately in one fixture usually better than 2 for a bad team. So let's look at my game week 7 team selection then for this match week. We've got in goal a little bit of Andre Onana. Now Andre Onana, I do believe, is a asset that really can do well this week. Crystal Palace obviously have looked quite good at times this season in terms of scoring goals. They haven't been the worst team, to be honest. But what I will say is, I actually believe that Onana, hopefully, I mean, this is a premature thing to say, of course, but hopefully Onana can start to revitalise and recover his own form. Because although this season in FPL he's not been good, what we saw against Burnley in game week 6 was basically what we were hoping for at the start of the season, which was save points. He got them against Burnley for the 7-pointer, so that was nice. Crystal Palace, obviously, Edouard is a doubt for this one, obviously ruled out as well, so that's good for the clean sheet prospects of Onana. But what's not good is the injuries to Reguilon and Martinez, especially Martinez, who, you know, you feel that defence in the centre-back pairing, maybe Lindelof plays, maybe someone, even Maguire might slot in, we'll have to see. Obviously Varane, I think he might still be fit, but we'll have to see whether he plays. So look, it's not ideal for Manchester United. Obviously they've been awful this season, and a 1-0 Burnley win does not drastically change things from that, but I feel hopefully Onana can get the points here. Obviously United were the best clean sheet team last season, 17 clean sheets, so if they can carry on a winning run, and that can include some clean sheets, that would be very, very nice. I think Crystal Palace, obviously, yeah, they have struggled for goals in previous seasons, but this season Edouard's been their man, and the fact he's out, we'll just have to hope for a quiet day at the office for Eberechi Eze. Fabian Schär, he scored in this fixture actually a few seasons back, an absolute pile driver, and he actually scored a very identical goal last season at home to Nottingham Forest in the opening day. So hopefully another one of those, please, Fabian. Yeah, look, the Swiss defender for my team, very unlucky last week with just the 6 points, but yeah, he's a long-term good buy that I brought in for Rico Henry, because Newcastle's fixtures going forward are looking really nice. And ultimately, I think there is goal threat there. Even though it didn't come in game week 6 against Sheffield United, there is potential for him to just hit one from long range and get in the box for those set pieces. And hopefully, a Trippier assist from a free kick for a Fabian Schär bullet header, that would be making my game week. So yes, please, FPL gods. Estupinian away to Villa. Now, you look at that and think Brighton would probably concede there because Aston Villa have been so good this season. Ollie Watkins back in the goals as well. So I think Brighton probably, their clean sheets have just not been there. But Estupinian is there for the attacking upside. Obviously, he gets those attacking returns on a regular basis and looked, I thought, really good against Bournemouth. Got the great assist for that Mitoma header. So I think Estupinian for me is one that just won't leave my team. I do think he's just a really good asset, even in tough fixtures, because he can return at any time. And I think those that are selling him do it with caution, with his high ownership as well. That will be a factor, not the only factor and the deciding factor, but for me, it's an outside factor that just puts me off selling him at the moment. But yeah, no, the reason I want to keep him is because I still feel he'll get points. So yeah, Estupinian hopefully gets the attack and return against a Villa defence that, fairly good to be fair, but sometimes they can blow a bit hot and cold. Trippier against his former side Burnley, I'm hoping for a nice Trippier goal. That would really make my week. I mean, this flashback to last season when I doubled up on the Newcastle defence and, the clean sheet wipeouts came every single time. So we just got to hope we're on the right side of it this time. And with Lyle Foster out, hopefully Newcastle do secure that clean sheet. But Trippier is so good for those attacking returns and the bonus points. So hopefully those will be on the horizon for my transfer in this week after selling Chilwell. Fernandes against Palace, I just don't see that as a terrible fixture. I think Fernandes still being on penalties, there's routes to points there. Obviously Fernandes with a great goal last week, so hopefully he can build on that and get some more goals this season. But look, good fixture. I wouldn't sell a penalty taker. I think ultimately United have been frustrating, but I've just got to hope for some more lucky Fernandes points. And if he can keep ticking along nicely after that 10-pointer last week, then I will be very happy with that. With the nice fixtures as well on the horizon, it just makes sense. Bryan Mbeumo. Now, obviously, Bryan Mbeumo last week was disappointing. He was also disappointing the week before, but slightly trickier away fixture at Newcastle. But he did return for me at home to Bournemouth. So, yeah, he's yet to get an attack and return for me in my team away from home. Obviously, I brought him in for that Game Week 3 game, thinking, yep, he's gonna haul big time. Like, this is going to be great. Can't wait for this. And then, of course, he blanked. But then the next week, to be fair to him, he did get a return against Bournemouth. So I can't complain too much. But I look at it and think, this guy against a Forest defence that are leaking goals. I know that they have been attackingly really good this season with the likes of Taiwo Awoniyi getting the goals and Gibbs White playing well, but I still feel that Forest are weak in defence. So I think Mbeumo, hopefully with a penalty as well, as I've said with Fernandes, but generally good fixture. It's one more week for Mbeumo. Hopefully this last week he will deliver and then I can sell him. But yeah, one more chance. And then Mitoma away to Villa. I do feel this is a game that ultimately, I say one more chance, he'd probably do well against United the next week, but Mitoma didn't quite get the returns against Man United that we were hoping for, but then boy did he against Bournemouth. So I think Mitoma is definitely one you can keep this week. Obviously he did get benched against Bournemouth, so that's things to think about going forward. How much is he going to start games week in, week out, and they've got the Europa League? But Mitoma is just such a good asset. He can return in any fixture, in my opinion. Even with Liverpool, Man City coming up, I don't fear those fixtures that much. So maybe on a wild card, he might go. But certainly, I want him probably by game week 11, game week 10. So yeah, he's a great player, and I still feel he can score some goals against Villa. Maddison against Liverpool, obviously he's a bit of a doubt, but we think he's going to start because he did train on Thursday, and he's just so central to that Spurs attack. Liverpool, obviously defensively, have not exactly been shutting up shop, doing that well in terms of their defence. So I think this is a game that Maddison can return in. And then Saka away to Bournemouth. I do feel that's a great fixture for Saka. If he starts, of course. Bournemouth defensively a bit leaky. And then Alvarez and Haaland against Wolves, I feel that's a great fixture. And hopefully those two come in clutch, especially Julian Alvarez after last week's disappointment. But to be honest, I'm not too bothered because I got the differential points from him in the weeks of Game Week 4 and 5. So very happy to own Alvarez. I think he is fairly nailed still. But obviously could be thinking about dropping him when fixtures get a lot worse. Then Turner, Brentford, I feel that's not the easiest games for Forest. I could see them conceding in that one, so he's going to be on my bench this week. Udogie, Liverpool. As I say, Liverpool game will be interesting. I think Spurs can score in that, but I also think Liverpool will. Salah, to be fair to him, has got a bit more back in form, and Udogie, I think, will probably concede, but maybe there's a chance of an attack and return against Liverpool for Udogie. I just feel that it's not worth starting him over my other defenders. Then we've got Mark Gay. I'm benching him again. Yes, I haven't learnt my lesson. Man United will probably blank and I'll think, why have I started Fernandes? But no, I think it makes sense because away to Manchester United is not the best of fixtures for a clean sheet, in my opinion. And yeah, Palace have been a bit up and down defensively. So he's good when he's got great home fixtures, especially next week. I think he's got Forest. But for this week, at least, I would say probably makes sense to bench Gay, and then Mubama home to Sheffield United isn't going to play anyway. So that's fine. That's my game week 7 lineup. As you can see, no double game week players. As I said, one bad player in 2 weeks is just still a bad player. In 2 matches, I should say. So yeah, I will hopefully get the points, get the green arrow this week. Thanks for watching my FPL team selection. Don't forget to listen to my podcast because that will be airing at around about Tuesday, Wednesday every week if we're able to. So subscribe to us on Spotify. We're called the Form is Temporary podcast. It's me and a good mate of mine at uni, Chris Sebastian. So do follow him on Instagram as well at Chris Sebastian _sportsjourno, and follow us on Twitter as well. We've got now a the Form is Temporary podcast X account, I should say now X. So it's at tfitpod at tfit_pod. That's where you can follow us. But yeah, do check out the Game Week 7 episode. We talked about all these assets and the double game weeks for Luton and Burnley. So yeah, do check that one out before the deadline at 11 today. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.